The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Kensington Palace as James Mitchell stood at his post. His red uniform was perfectly pressed, his black bearskin hat sitting tall on his head. He had been a royal guard for 3 years now, and he knew the rules by heart. Stand still. Look straight ahead. Never speak unless spoken to. Never show emotion. Never break protocol. James was good at his job. Some people thought being a royal guard was easy, just standing around looking fancy. But James knew better. His feet ached after hours of standing. His shoulders burned from holding the same position. In summer, the heavy uniform made him sweat. In winter, the cold bit through his clothes. But he never complained. This was an honor. His father had been a royal guard. His grandfather, too. It was in his blood. That Tuesday morning started like any other. James had woken up at 5 in the morning. He ate a quick breakfast. He checked his uniform 3 times to make sure everything was perfect. No wrinkles, no dust. Shoes shined so bright you could see your face in them. Then he reported for duty at 7 sharp. The palace was quiet in the early hours. Staff members hurried past preparing for the day ahead. Gardeners trimmed the roses. Cleaners polished the windows until they sparkled. Everyone had their job to do and everyone did it well. James took his position near the side entrance, the one that led to the private gardens. It was a good spot. Not too much foot traffic. Not too boring either. He had been standing there for about an hour when he heard footsteps approaching. Light, quick footsteps. James kept his eyes forward as he was trained to do. But from the corner of his eye he could see someone coming closer. It was a woman in a simple blue dress and white cardigan. She wore sunglasses even though the morning sun was still gentle. Her blonde hair was styled in that familiar way that everyone in Britain recognized. Princess Diana. James felt his heart skip a beat, but his face remained perfectly still. He had seen the princess before, of course. She lived at Kensington Palace with her sons, but she had never walked this close to his post. Usually she used the main entrance or the private car entrance. She had never come through the side entrance where James stood guard. The princess walked slowly like she was thinking about something heavy. Her head was down. Her shoulders looked tired. James noticed these things even though he kept staring straight ahead. You learn to see without looking when you are a royal guard. Your eyes stay forward, but you notice everything around you. As she got closer, James could hear her breathing. It sounded sad somehow, like she had been crying or was trying not to cry. He wanted to look at her properly to see if she was okay. But the rules were clear. Never look directly at the royals unless they speak to you first. Never ask questions. Never interfere. Princess Diana stopped walking. She was standing right next to James now, just a few feet away. She was close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something floral and gentle. She stood there for a long moment, not moving, not speaking. James could feel her looking at him. His training told him to stay still, to keep looking forward, to pretend she was not there. But his heart was pounding in his chest. Then she spoke. Her voice was so soft that James almost missed it. It must be hard, she said. Standing there all alone for so many hours. James felt his breath catch in his throat. The Princess of Wales was talking to him. To him, not to another royal. Not to an official. To James Mitchell, a simple guard who was supposed to be invisible. He did not know what to do. The rules said he should not respond unless asked a direct question. But was this a question? It sounded like one even if she did not end it with a question mark. He decided to stay silent. That was the safe choice. The proper choice. Princess Diana took a step closer. Now she was standing right in front of him, looking up at his face. James could see her clearly now even though he kept his eyes forward. She had taken off her sunglasses. Her blue eyes were red around the edges. She had been crying. Recently, too. I know you cannot answer me, she said softly. I know the rules. But I want you to know that I see you, not just the uniform, not just the guard. I see the person inside, the man who stands here in the rain and the heat and the cold, the man who has a family somewhere, a life outside these walls. I see you. James felt something strange happening inside his chest. His eyes began to sting. No one had ever talked to him like this while he was on duty. Most people looked right through him. To them, he was part of the scenery. A decoration, a symbol of the monarchy, but not a real person. Even the other royals usually ignored the guards. They were used to having people around who were not really there. But Princess Diana was different. Everyone said she was different. James had heard the stories. How she visited hospitals and held hands with AIDS patients when everyone else was afraid to touch them. How she sat on the floor to talk to homeless people instead of standing over them. How she hugged people who were crying instead of keeping her distance like royals were supposed to do. Now James understood. Those stories were true. This woman saw people, really saw them. Not their jobs or their uniforms or their titles. She saw their hearts. "You must get tired," Diana continued, her voice still gentle. "Your feet must hurt. Your back too. But you stand here anyway because you believe in duty, in service, in doing what is right even when it is hard. That takes courage. Real courage." A single tear rolled down James's cheek. He could not stop it. It just came out, sliding down his face and disappearing into his collar. He hoped no one else could see it. He hoped his commanding officer was not watching. Crying on duty could get him in serious trouble. Guards were supposed to be tough, emotionless, strong. But in that moment, standing in front of Princess Diana, James did not feel like a guard. He felt like a human being. A human being who was seen and understood by someone who was supposed to be untouchable, someone who was supposed to be above people like him. Diana saw the tear. She saw everything. And she smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small, sad, understanding smile. The kind of smile that says, "I know. I understand. You are not alone." Then she did something that James would never forget for the rest of his life. Princess Diana reached into her small handbag and pulled out a white handkerchief. It was delicate with tiny embroidered flowers along the edges. The kind of handkerchief that belonged to a princess. She held it out toward James, her hand steady even though her eyes were still wet with her own tears. "Please," she said quietly. "Take it." James felt his whole body go rigid. This was completely against protocol. Guards were not supposed to accept anything from anyone while on duty. They were not supposed to interact with the royals in any personal way. They were supposed to be like statues, present but not participating in the life around them. Taking a handkerchief from Princess Diana would be breaking every rule he had ever been taught. But Diana kept her hand extended. She was not commanding him to take it. She was offering it. There was a difference. Her eyes were kind and patient. She would not be offended if he refused. She would understand. But something in her expression told James that she wanted to do this. She needed to do this. Not for him, but maybe for herself too. Slowly, carefully, James moved his hand. His arm felt heavy, like it was fighting against invisible chains. His fingers reached out and touched the soft fabric of the handkerchief. It was warm from being in her bag. He took it from her hand, their fingers brushing for just a second. Then he brought the handkerchief up to his face and wiped away the tear that had fallen. "Thank you, Your Royal Highness," he whispered. His voice was so quiet that only she could hear it. Speaking while on duty was another broken rule. But somehow in this moment the rules felt less important than being human. Diana's smile grew a little wider. "You are welcome," she said. "And please keep it. You might need it again someday." She turned to walk away, but then she stopped. She looked back at James with an expression that he could not quite read. There was sadness in it, yes, but also something else. Understanding, maybe, or connection. Like they had shared something important even though they were from completely different worlds. "Sometimes," Diana said, speaking more to herself than to James, "the people who seem the strongest are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. The ones who stand still are the ones running the fastest inside. The ones who cannot speak are the ones with the most to say." Then she walked away, her footsteps growing fainter until James could not hear them anymore. He stood there, the handkerchief clutched in his hand, his mind spinning. What had just happened? Had he imagined it? No, the handkerchief was real. He could feel it soft and delicate against his rough palm. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. James stood at his post, but his thoughts were far away. He kept thinking about Diana's words, about how she had seen him. Really seen him. Not many people did that. His commanding officers saw a soldier. His colleagues saw a fellow guard. His family saw a son, a brother. But nobody saw James the way Diana had seen him in those few minutes. She had seen past everything to the person underneath. When his shift finally ended at noon, James returned to the guardhouse. He changed out of his ceremonial uniform and into his regular clothes. The other guards were talking and laughing, making plans for their time off. Someone was talking about a football match. Someone else was complaining about his girlfriend. Normal conversations. Normal life. But James felt different. Changed somehow. He put Diana's handkerchief carefully into his pocket. He would keep it safe. He would keep it forever. That night James could not sleep. He lay in his small apartment staring at the ceiling, thinking about the princess. He thought about how sad she had looked. How her eyes were red from crying. What could make a princess cry? She had everything, didn't she? A palace. Beautiful clothes, fame, money. Everyone loved her. The whole world knew her name. But then James remembered something his grandmother used to say. Gold cages are still cages, boy. Sometimes the biggest prisons are the ones with the prettiest decorations. Maybe Diana was trapped too, not by rules about standing still and staying quiet like James was, but trapped by expectations, by duties, by a life she did not choose. James had chosen to be a guard. It was hard, yes, but it was his choice. Diana was born into her role. She married into an even bigger role. Did she ever get to choose? Did she ever get to be just Diana, not Princess Diana? Not the people's princess. Not the future queen. Just Diana. The next morning, James returned to his post. He hoped he might see Diana again. He had so many things he wanted to say to her now. He wanted to tell her that he understood, that he saw her too, that she was not alone either. But Diana did not come by his post that day, or the next day, or the day after that. A week passed. Then 2 weeks. James began to think that their meeting had been a one-time thing, a brief magical moment that would never happen again. He still carried her handkerchief in his pocket every day, though. It reminded him that someone had seen him. Someone had cared. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, something unexpected happened. James was standing at his usual post when a palace official approached him. The man was older, with gray hair and a serious expression. He wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. "Guard Mitchell?" the official said. "Yes, sir," James replied, keeping his eyes forward as required. "You are requested for a special assignment. Come with me, please." James felt his stomach drop. A special assignment? That could mean anything. Had someone reported his interaction with Princess Diana? Was he in trouble? Would he lose his position? He had broken protocol. He had accepted something from a royal. He had spoken while on duty. Any of those things could end his career. He followed the official through the palace corridors. They walked past paintings of old kings and queens, past rooms filled with antique furniture, past windows that looked out over the beautiful gardens. James tried to stay calm, but his heart was racing. What was happening? Where were they going? Finally, they stopped in front of a door. It was a simple door, not one of the grand ones with gold handles. The official knocked twice, then opened it. "Guard Mitchell, ma'am," he announced. "Thank you, Robert. Please leave us." James recognized that voice immediately. It was Diana. He stepped into the room, and the official closed the door behind him, leaving James alone with the Princess of Wales. The room was small and cozy, not at all like the grand rooms James had imagined royals used. There was a comfortable sofa, some bookshelves, a desk with papers scattered across it. Photographs covered one wall. James could see pictures of Diana's sons, William and Harry. Pictures of Diana laughing, Diana at charity events, Diana being human. Diana stood by the window, looking out at the rain. She turned when James entered, and he saw that she had been crying again. Her eyes were red, her face pale. She looked tired. "So tired, please," she said, gesturing to a chair. "Sit down. We need to talk." James sat, his mind full of questions. Why was he here? What did the princess want to talk about? And why did she look so sad, so broken? Diana took a deep breath like she was gathering courage. Then she looked directly at James, and what she said next shocked him more than anything else that had happened. "I need your help," Diana whispered, "and I cannot ask anyone else." James sat frozen in his chair, staring at Princess Diana. Her words echoed in his mind. She needed his help. But why him? He was nobody special. Just a guard, one of hundreds who worked at the palace. What could he possibly do for a princess that no one else could do better? Diana must have seen the confusion on his face because she gave him a small, sad smile. "You must be wondering why I called you here," she said softly. She walked away from the window and sat down on the sofa across from James. For a moment, she looked like any other woman. Not a princess, not a celebrity, just a person who was hurting and trying to find a way through the pain. "I chose you," Diana continued, "because of what happened last Tuesday, when I spoke to you at your post. Do you remember?" Yes, ma'am, James said. His voice came out scratchy. I remember every second. You cried, Diana said. Just one tear, but you cried. Do you know how rare that is? Most people spend their whole lives building walls around their feelings. They hide their pain because they think showing emotion makes them weak. But you let me see your truth. Even though you could have gotten in trouble. Even though it broke all your rules. You let yourself be vulnerable. That takes real strength. James did not know what to say. He had never thought about it that way. To him, crying on duty was a weakness, a failure. But Diana saw it differently. I have been living in this world for years now, Diana said, her voice growing quieter. This royal world, it is beautiful on the outside. Palaces and jewels and fancy dinners. But inside it is cold, so cold. People do not say what they really mean. They do not show what they really feel. Everything is about duty and protocol and keeping up appearances. I feel like I am drowning sometimes and everyone around me is just watching, making sure I drown properly in the correct royal manner. Her words cut through James like a knife. He could hear the pain in her voice. The loneliness. He thought about all the photographs he had seen of Diana, always smiling, always perfect, always graceful. He had never imagined that behind that smile was someone who felt like she was drowning. Last week, Diana continued, I had a very bad day, one of the worst days of my life. I cannot tell you the details. Some things must stay private. But I was walking through the palace feeling completely alone, feeling like nobody in the world understood what I was going through. And then I saw you, standing at your post, so still, so strong, so alone. And I realized that maybe you understood after all. I do not understand what it is like to be a princess, James said carefully. I cannot imagine that kind of life. No, Diana agreed. But you understand what it is like to stand in one place and carry a weight that nobody else can see. You understand what it is like to have a role to play no matter how you feel inside. You understand what it is like to be looked at but not truly seen. That is enough. That is more than enough. James felt his throat tighten. She was right. He did understand those things. Maybe not in the exact same way, but he understood the feeling. The weight? The invisibility. Diana reached over to a small table next to the sofa and picked up a brown envelope. She held it for a moment, staring at it like it contained something dangerous. Then she looked back at James. I need you to deliver something for me, she said, and I need you to never tell anyone about it. Not your commanding officer, not your family, not your closest friend. Can you do that? James hesitated. This was serious, more serious than accepting a handkerchief. If he agreed to this, he would be breaking more than protocol. He would be keeping secrets from people he was supposed to answer to. But when he looked at Diana's face, at the desperation and hope mixed together in her eyes, he found himself nodding. Yes, ma'am, he said. I can do that. Diana let out a long breath like she had been holding it in for hours. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means to me. She handed him the envelope. It was sealed with wax, old-fashioned style. There was no name on it, no address. Just the envelope, plain and brown and ordinary looking. Tomorrow is your day off, correct? Diana asked. Yes, ma'am. Good. Tomorrow morning I need you to go to St. Paul's Cathedral. At exactly 10 o'clock, go inside and sit in the 5th row on the left side. There will be a woman there with a blue scarf and a brown coat. She will be praying. When she stands up to leave, follow her outside. Not too close. Keep your distance. When she stops at the fountain, give her this envelope. Do not speak to her. Do not ask her any questions. Just give her the envelope and walk away. Can you remember all of that? James repeated the instructions in his head. St. Paul's Cathedral, 10 o'clock, 5th row, left side. Woman with blue scarf and brown coat. Follow her to the fountain. Give her the envelope, walk away. Yes, ma'am, he said. I can remember. One more thing, Diana said, and her voice became very serious. If anyone stops you, if anyone asks what you are doing or what is in the envelope, you must destroy it immediately. Tear it up, burn it if you can. Do not let anyone read what is inside. This is extremely important. Do you understand? I understand, James said, though he did not understand at all. What could be in this envelope that was so important, so secret? He wanted to ask, but he could see that Diana would not tell him. This was her secret, and she was trusting him to protect it without knowing what it was. Diana stood up, and James quickly stood too. She walked over to him and placed both her hands on his shoulders. She looked directly into his eyes, and James saw tears gathering in hers again. "You are a good man, James Mitchell," she said. "I knew it the moment I saw you. The world needs more good men. Men who see people. Men who care. Men who do the right thing even when it is hard. Promise me you will always stay that way, no matter what happens, no matter what life throws at you. Promise me." "I promise," James said, and he meant it with his whole heart. Diana pulled him into a hug. It was quick, just a few seconds, but it shocked James completely. Royals did not hug guards. It was not done. It was unthinkable. But Diana did not seem to care about what was done or not done. She hugged him like he was a friend, like he was someone who mattered. When she pulled away, she was smiling through her tears. "Now go," she said, "before Robert comes looking for you." "And James, thank you for everything." James left the room in a daze. He walked through the palace corridors with the envelope hidden inside his jacket, his mind spinning with questions. What was he carrying? Who was the woman he was supposed to meet? Why was this so secret? Why had Diana chosen him for this task? But even with all those questions, James felt something else too. He felt trusted. He felt needed. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. Not just standing at a post, not just following orders, but helping someone who desperately needed help. That night, James did not sleep at all. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the envelope on his bedside table. Tomorrow would change everything. He did not know how yet. He did not know why, but he could feel it in his bones. Tomorrow he would step into a world he did not understand, a world of secrets and danger and mystery, and all because a princess had looked at him and seen not just a guard but a person. A good person, someone worth trusting. As the first light of dawn began to creep through his window, James made a decision. He would protect Diana's secret with his life if he had to. She had given him her trust. She had seen him when no one else did. The least he could do was be worthy of that trust. He got out of bed and got dressed. Simple clothes. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make him stand out. He put the envelope carefully in his inside jacket pocket, right over his heart. Then he looked at himself in the mirror. Tomorrow he would not be Guard Mitchell. Tomorrow he would just be James. And James would make sure that Princess Diana's secret stayed safe no matter what. The morning was gray and cold when James stepped off the bus near St. Paul's Cathedral. He had left his apartment early, taking 2 different buses to get there instead of his usual route. He did not know if anyone was watching him, but he wanted to be careful. Diana had trusted him with something important. He would not let her down. The cathedral stood massive and beautiful against the cloudy sky. Its dome rose high above the city, a symbol of faith and history. James had been here once before, years ago, with his school. But that visit felt like a lifetime ago. Today, he was not a tourist. He was a man on a secret mission, and his heart pounded in his chest like a drum. He checked his watch. 9:45. He had 15 minutes. He decided to walk around the cathedral first, to see if anything looked strange or suspicious. Diana's warning echoed in his mind. If anyone stops you, destroy the envelope immediately. Why would someone stop him? Who would even know what he was doing? James walked slowly around the building, trying to look casual. There were other people around, tourists taking photographs, a few locals hurrying to work, a man selling newspapers from a small stand. Everything seemed normal. Too normal, maybe. James felt like he was in a movie, expecting danger to jump out at any moment. At exactly 10 o'clock, James climbed the steps and entered the cathedral. The inside was breathtaking. High ceilings, beautiful stained glass windows, the smell of old wood and candle wax. His footsteps echoed on the stone floor. A few people sat in the pews, praying or just sitting in silence. James felt like an intruder, bringing secrets into this holy place. He found the 5th row on the left side. There was already someone sitting there. A woman, just as Diana had said. She wore a brown coat and a blue scarf wrapped around her neck. Her head was bowed, her hands folded in prayer. James could not see her face. He sat down at the other end of the row, leaving several empty seats between them. He did not want to seem suspicious by sitting too close. He pretended to pray too, bowing his head and closing his eyes. But his mind was racing. Was this the right woman? Should he say something? No, Diana said not to speak. Just follow. Just give her the envelope at the fountain. James opened his eyes slightly and watched the woman from the corner of his vision. She stayed still for a long time. 5 minutes passed, then 10. James began to worry. What if she never moved? What if she was not the right person? What if this was all a mistake? Then suddenly the woman stood up. She made the sign of the cross and began walking toward the exit. James waited a few seconds, then stood up too. He followed her, keeping his distance like Diana had instructed. The woman walked slowly, like she had all the time in the world. She did not look back. She did not seem to notice James behind her. Outside, the wind had picked up. The woman pulled her scarf tighter around her neck and walked down the steps. James followed, his hand instinctively moving to his jacket pocket to make sure the envelope was still there. It was, safe and sound against his chest. The woman walked toward the fountain in the small square near the cathedral. Water splashed gently despite the cold weather. A few pigeons pecked at crumbs near the benches. The woman stopped at the edge of the fountain and looked down into the water. This was it. This was the moment. James walked toward her, his legs feeling stiff and awkward. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope. He was just a few steps away now. Just a few more seconds and this would all be over. He could give her the envelope and walk away and go, back to his normal life, but then something happened that James did not expect. A hand grabbed his arm, hard, tight, painful. "What do you think you are doing?" A voice growled in his ear. James spun around and found himself face to face with a large man in a dark suit. The man's grip on his arm was like iron. His eyes were cold and hard. James's first thought was police. Or security. Someone official. Someone who knew what he was doing. Diana's words flashed through his mind. "Destroy the envelope immediately." "I'm just walking," James said, trying to sound calm even though his heart was hammering. "Let go of me." "I saw you following that woman," the man said. "From inside the cathedral." "What are you planning? What is in your pocket?" The woman at the fountain had turned around. She saw what was happening. Her eyes went wide with fear. She started to walk away quickly, almost running. "Wait!" James called out, but she did not stop. She disappeared around the corner of a building and she was gone. The man's grip tightened. "Give me what is in your pocket now." James made a split-second decision. With his free hand, he pulled out the envelope. The man reached for it, but James was faster. He tore the envelope in half, then in quarters, then into smaller and smaller pieces. The man tried to grab the pieces, but James threw them into the fountain. The water carried them away, the ink already starting to run and blur. "You fool," the man shouted. "Do you know what you have just done?" "I do not know what you are talking about," James said, his voice stronger now. "I was just throwing away some rubbish." "Is that illegal now?" The man stared at him for a long moment. James could see him thinking, deciding what to do. Then slowly he released James's arm. "Get out of here," the man said, "and if I see you around here again, you will regret it." James did not need to be told twice. He turned and walked away, forcing himself not to run. His whole body was shaking. His arm throbbed where the man had grabbed him. But he had done it. He had destroyed the envelope like Diana told him to. The secret, whatever it was safe. He walked for several blocks before he finally let himself stop. He ducked into a small cafe and ordered a coffee he did not want. His hands shook as he brought the cup to his lips. What had just happened? Who was that man? Why was he watching the cathedral? And who was the woman in the blue scarf? James stayed in the cafe for over an hour trying to calm down. He replayed everything in his mind. The man had said he saw James following the woman from inside the cathedral. That meant he was watching. But was he watching the woman? Or was he watching for anyone who might approach her? Was he working for someone? Against someone? James realized with a cold shock that he had been involved in something much bigger than he understood. Diana was not just sending a letter to a friend. This was dangerous. Real danger. The kind that involved men with hard eyes and tight grips. The kind that could get people hurt. Or worse. When James finally left the cafe, he took a complicated route home. He changed buses 3 times. He walked through a department store and out a different exit. He doubled back on his path twice. By the time he reached his apartment, he was exhausted and paranoid. But he was also fairly certain no one had followed him. That night, James lay in bed and stared at the ceiling again. He could not stop thinking about Diana. Was she safe? Did she know what had happened? Would she be angry that he failed to deliver the envelope, or would she be glad that he destroyed it before anyone could read it? He thought about the woman in the blue scarf, too. Who was she? Why was she important? And where was she now? Was she safe, or was she in danger because James had failed? These questions spun through his mind all night. He did not sleep. He could not sleep. And when the morning came, James had made a decision. He had to talk to Diana. He had to tell her what happened. She needed to know. But getting to Diana would not be easy. She had come to him before. But he could not just walk up to her apartment and knock on the door. There were procedures, protocols, guards who would stop him. He was just a low-level guard. He had no reason to request a private meeting with the Princess of Wales. James went to work that day in a fog. He stood at his post, but his mind was far away. He kept looking around, wondering if the man from the cathedral would appear. Wondering if Diana would send for him. Wondering what would happen next. Hours passed. Nothing happened. James began to think that maybe it was over. Maybe Diana had found another way. Maybe she did not need him anymore. But then, as his shift was ending, the same palace official from before approached him. Robert, the man with gray hair and the serious expression. "Guard Mitchell," Robert said. "You are requested again." James felt his stomach drop. "By who, sir?" "You know who," Robert said, his voice low. "And she is not happy. Whatever you did or did not do, I suggest you have a good explanation ready." James followed Robert through the palace, his mind racing. Diana was not happy. That meant she knew. She knew he had failed. She knew he had destroyed the envelope. But how? How did she know so quickly? They stopped at the same door as before. Robert knocked and opened it without waiting for an answer. Diana was standing by the window again, but this time her back was rigid with tension. She did not turn around when James entered. She did not speak. The silence in the room was heavy and frightening. "Your Royal Highness," James said quietly. "I can explain. Can you?" Diana said, her voice sharp and cold. It was so different from the gentle voice he remembered. "Can you explain why my very important message is now floating in pieces in a fountain?" "Someone was watching," James said. "A man. He grabbed me. He demanded the envelope. I had no choice but to destroy it like you told me to. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I failed you." Diana finally turned around. Her face was hard at first, angry. But then, as she looked at James, something changed. Her expression softened. The anger drained away, replaced by something else. Concern, maybe. Or fear. James described the man in detail. Tall, broad shoulders, dark suit, cold eyes. He described the way the man had grabbed him. The way he had demanded the envelope. The way he had watched from inside the cathedral. As James spoke, he saw Diana's face grow paler and paler. When he finished, Diana walked to the sofa and sat down heavily. She looked like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Her hands were trembling. She clasped them together tightly in her lap, trying to make them stop. "It is worse than I thought," she whispered. "They are watching more closely than I realized." "Who, ma'am?" James asked. "Who is watching you?" Diana looked up at him with eyes full of fear and sadness. For a long moment she said nothing. James could see her struggling with herself, deciding how much to tell him. Finally she spoke. "Sit down, James, please. I think you deserve to know the truth. You have risked enough for me without understanding why." James sat down carefully on the chair across from her. His heart was pounding again. The truth. Finally, he would understand what this was all about. Diana took a deep breath. "What I am about to tell you cannot leave this room. If the wrong people find out that I have told you these things, it will be dangerous. For both of us. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "My life is not what people think," Diana began. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Everyone sees the fairy tale, the beautiful princess in the palace. But they do not see the cage. They do not see the control. Every move I make is watched. Every conversation I have is monitored. Every friend I try to make is investigated. I cannot breathe without someone writing a report about it." James listened, shocked. He had known that royals had strict rules. But this sounded like something else. Something darker. "My marriage is over," Diana continued. "It has been over for years. But we pretend. We smile for the cameras. We stand together at public events. We lie to the whole world because the truth would be too scandalous, too damaging to the monarchy. But I cannot pretend anymore. It is killing me inside. The loneliness, the betrayal, the feeling that I am nothing more than a decoration in someone else's story. Tears began to roll down Diana's face, but she kept talking. I wanted to leave, to take my sons and start a new life, a real life, but they will not let me. They say it would damage the crown. They say my duty is to stay, to suffer in silence, to protect the institution even if it destroys me. Who says these things? James asked. Who has this power over you? The palace, Diana said simply. The advisors. The family. They all work together to control everything. To control me. I tried to find help outside. I tried to reach out to people who could tell my story. People who could let the world know what is really happening behind these walls. But they watch everyone I contact. They block my calls. They intercept my letters. That is why I needed you. James began to understand. The envelope. It was meant for a journalist. Someone who could tell your story. Diana nodded. A woman I met at a charity event. She is brave and honest. She is not afraid of powerful people. I wrote everything down. The truth, all of it. I thought if I could just get the letter to her, maybe things could change. Maybe I could finally be free. But the man at the cathedral, James said, he was one of them. Someone working for the palace. Or someone working for someone who wants to protect the palace, Diana said. There are many people who have an interest in keeping me quiet. People who would lose power if the truth came out. People who would do anything to stop me. James felt a chill run down his spine. This was not just about an unhappy marriage or royal protocol. This was about power, control, and people who would hurt others to protect their interests. What was in the letter? James asked. What truth were you trying to tell? Diana hesitated. Then she seemed to make a decision. She stood up and walked to her desk. She opened a drawer and pulled out several papers. She brought them back to James and handed them to him. Read these, she said. Then you will understand everything. James took the papers with shaking hands. They were covered in Diana's handwriting. Neat, careful letters that told a story of heartbreak and betrayal. She wrote about her marriage. About how she had been so young and naive when it started. About how she discovered that her husband's heart belonged to someone else. About how she was expected to smile and wave while her world crumbled around her. But the papers contained more than just personal pain. Diana wrote about how she was prevented from doing the charity work she cared about. How her efforts to help AIDS patients and homeless people were seen as embarrassing to the royal family. How she was told to be more traditional, more distant, more cold. How they wanted to turn her into something she was not. She wrote about being followed everywhere. About finding recording devices in her rooms. About phone calls that clicked and buzzed because someone was listening. About friends who stopped calling because they were intimidated or threatened. About feeling like a prisoner in a golden cage, and she wrote about her sons. About how desperately she wanted to protect them from this life. About how she wanted them to grow up knowing love and freedom, not duty and control. About how she feared they would be trapped the same way she was trapped. When James finished reading, he looked up at Diana with tears in his own eyes. This is terrible, he said. How can they treat you this way? You are a human being. You deserve better than this. But I am not just a human being, Diana said sadly. I am a princess. I am public property. I belong to the institution, not to myself. That is what they believe. That is what they will never let me forget. What will you do now? James asked. The letter is destroyed. The journalist did not receive it. Diana was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at James with a strange expression. Determination mixed with fear. Hope mixed with despair. I have another copy, she said. I made two. I was not sure if I should tell you this, but I have decided to trust you completely. You have proven yourself worthy of that trust. She went back to her desk and pulled out another envelope. This one looked exactly like the first. Same brown paper, same wax seal. She held it carefully, like it was made of glass. I need you to deliver this one too, Diana said. But not to the journalist. That route is compromised now. They are watching her. But I have another contact, someone even better, someone with more influence, more power, someone who can really help me. Who? James asked. A member of parliament, Diana said. Someone who has been speaking out against corruption in high places. Someone brave enough to challenge even the royal family if necessary. If I can get this letter to him, he can bring my story to light. He can start an investigation. He can help me get free. James felt his stomach twist with anxiety. But after what happened at the cathedral, they will be watching even more closely. How can we possibly succeed? Because they will not expect us to try again so soon, Diana said. They think they have scared us off. They think we have given up. That is why we must act now, tomorrow, before they have time to strengthen their watch. Tomorrow? James felt dizzy. But I am on duty tomorrow. I cannot leave my post. I have already arranged for you to be reassigned, Diana said. You will be on a special patrol route, one that takes you near Parliament. At exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you will take your break. You will walk to the coffee shop on the corner of Bridge Street. The Parliament member will be there. His name is Michael Chambers. He will be sitting alone at a table by the window, reading a newspaper. You will sit at the table next to him. You will order a coffee, and when you leave, you will accidentally leave this envelope on your table. He will find it after you are gone. It will look like an accident, like you forgot something. Do you understand? James nodded slowly. It was a better plan than the first one, more subtle, more careful, but it was still dangerous. If someone was watching, if someone suspected, if something went wrong. I know I am asking a lot, Diana said softly. I know this is not what you signed up for when you became a guard. You wanted to serve your country, to stand proud in your uniform, not to sneak around delivering secret letters for a troubled princess. If you want to say no, I will understand. I will not hold it against you. James thought about it, really thought about it. This was serious. This could end his career. This could get him arrested. This could get him hurt. Or worse. But then he thought about Diana's face when she talked about feeling like a prisoner. He thought about her words about her sons. He thought about how she had seen him when no one else did. How she had treated him like a person, not a decoration. How she had trusted him with her deepest pain. And he thought about his grandmother's words again. Sometimes the biggest prisons are the ones with the prettiest decorations. Diana was trapped. She needed help. And she had no one else to turn to. How could he say no to that? How could he walk away from someone who desperately needed saving? I will do it, James said firmly. I will deliver the letter. And I will make sure it gets to the right person this time. I promise you. Diana closed her eyes and more tears slipped down her cheeks. But these tears looked different. They looked like relief, like hope. Thank you, she whispered. You are saving my life. You might not see it that way, but you are. You are giving me a chance at freedom, at happiness, at a future where I can be myself instead of what everyone expects me to be. She stood up and walked. The next day arrived with bright sunshine, unusual for London. James put on his uniform with extra care. Every button perfect, every crease sharp. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. On the outside, he looked like Guard Mitchell, professional and composed. But inside he was James, scared and determined and carrying a secret that could change everything. He reported for duty at 7 in the morning. His commanding officer gave him his new assignment without comment. A patrol route. Nothing unusual. Just walk the designated path, check the gates, observe any suspicious activity. Standard procedure. His officer had no idea that this routine patrol was actually a cover for something much more important. James started his route at noon. He walked slowly, carefully, observing everything around him. Were those two men in suits watching him? Or were they just businessmen on their lunch break? Was that car parked across the street following him? Or had it been there all along? Every person, every vehicle, every shadow seemed suspicious. James forced himself to breathe normally. To act natural, he was just a guard on patrol. Nothing special. Nothing interesting. The envelope was hidden inside his uniform jacket, pressed against his chest. He could feel it with every breath, a constant reminder of what he was carrying. Diana's truth. Diana's hope. Diana's chance at freedom. At 1:30, James reached the area near Parliament. The buildings were impressive, full of history and power. Members of Parliament walked in and out. Important people making important decisions. And somewhere among them was Michael Chambers, the man who could help Diana. James walked past the coffee shop twice before actually going in. He wanted to make sure no one was following him. The street seemed clear. Just normal people going about their normal day. At exactly 2 o'clock, James pushed open the door and stepped inside. The shop smelled wonderful. Fresh coffee and baked goods. Soft music played in the background. A few customers sat at tables, reading or working on laptops. James scanned the room quickly and found him. Michael Chambers, sitting by the window, reading a newspaper. Just as Diana had said, Chambers was a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple suit and glasses. He looked up briefly when James entered, then went back to his newspaper. No sign of recognition. No sign that he knew anything special was about to happen. James ordered a coffee from the counter. His hands were steady, but his heart raced. He took his coffee and walked to a table right next to Chambers. So close that he could hear the man breathing. So close that he could see the headlines on the newspaper. Something about education reform. James sat down and took a sip of his coffee. It burned his tongue, but he barely noticed. He set the cup down and glanced around the shop one more time. Everyone seemed occupied with their own business. No one was paying attention to him. This was good. This was the moment. He reached inside his jacket slowly, as if scratching an itch. His fingers found the envelope. He pulled it out carefully, keeping it below the table where no one could see. Then he set it on the chair next to him, covering it with his jacket that he had taken off. James finished his coffee quickly. Too quickly. It was still hot and burned his throat, but he needed to leave now before anyone became suspicious. He stood up, leaving his jacket on the chair with the envelope hidden underneath. Then he walked to the counter. "Excuse me," he said to the barista. "I need to use the bathroom." "Sure, it is in the back," the girl said with a smile. James walked to the bathroom and went inside. He counted to 60 in his head. Then he opened the door and walked back through the shop. But instead of returning to his table, he headed straight for the exit. "Sir," the barista called out. "Your jacket." James turned, looking confused. "My jacket?" He glanced at his table and saw his jacket still sitting on the chair. "Oh, I am such an idiot." "Thank you." He walked back to his table. But as he reached for his jacket, he made sure to move quickly, casually. He grabbed the jacket, and the envelope that had been hidden underneath it slid onto the table. Visible now, obviously forgotten. James put on his jacket, patted his pockets like he was checking for his wallet, then nodded to himself, satisfied. "Thank you again," he said to the barista, and walked out of the shop. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. He had done it. He had left the envelope. Now it was up to Chambers to find it and read it. James forced himself to walk normally. Not too fast, not too slow, just a guard on patrol taking a coffee break, going back to work. He did not look back at the shop. He did not try to see if Chambers had noticed the envelope. He just walked away, following his patrol route like nothing unusual had happened. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. James could not focus on anything. His mind kept returning to the coffee shop. Had Chambers found the envelope? Had he read it? What would he do with the information? Would he help Diana? Or would he turn the letter over to the palace, trying to protect his own career? When James finally finished his shift at 6 o'clock, he was exhausted. Not from standing or walking, but from the constant anxiety. He changed out of his uniform and went home. He ate dinner without tasting it. He watched television without seeing it. He went to bed early but could not sleep. 3 days passed. James heard nothing from Diana, nothing from anyone. He went to work, stood at his post, followed his routines. Everything seemed normal. But inside, James was dying to know what had happened. Had his mission succeeded, or had it failed again? On the 4th day, James was standing at his usual post when he saw Diana walking through the palace gardens. She was with her sons, William and Harry. The boys were laughing, chasing each other around the fountain. Diana was smiling. Really smiling. Not the fake smile she wore in photographs, but a real smile that reached her eyes. She saw James and walked toward him, the boys running ahead of her. When she reached his post, she stopped and looked up at him. She did not speak. The rules said she should not. But her eyes spoke volumes. They said, "Thank you." They said, "You did it." They said, "I am free." Then she did something that shocked James completely. She winked at him. Just a small, quick wink, but it was there. A secret communication between two people who understood each other. Two people who had fought together for something important. Diana walked away, following her sons toward the palace. James watched her go, and for the first time in days he felt his anxiety melt away. She was okay. Whatever was going to happen, she was okay. She had hope now. She had a fighting chance. That night, James turned on the evening news. The top story made him sit up straight. Michael Chambers, Member of Parliament, was calling for an investigation into how the royal family treated its members. He was talking about modernizing the monarchy, about protecting the human rights of people who married into royal life, about making sure no one, no matter how important their title, should be treated as public property. He did not mention Diana by name. He did not quote from her letter. But James knew. Chambers had received the letter. He had read it, and he was doing something about it. He was being careful, strategic, not revealing his source, but he was taking action. Over the following weeks, things began to change, slowly at first. Articles started appearing in newspapers about the pressures of royal life. Television programs discussed whether the monarchy needed reform. Other members of Parliament joined Chambers in calling for investigations and changes. And Diana, beautiful, brave Diana, began to look different. The sadness in her eyes began to fade. She smiled more. She laughed more. She seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She was still trapped in many ways. The battle was far from over. But now she was not fighting alone. Now people were listening. Now there was hope. James never spoke to Diana privately again. Their paths crossed occasionally in the palace, but always with other people around. Always in official capacity. But every time they saw each other, there was a moment. A small smile. A brief nod. A look that said, "We did it. We made a difference. We helped change something important." Years later, after everything that happened, James would think back to those days. He would remember the first time Diana spoke to him at his post. How she had seen him when no one else did. How she had trusted him with her deepest secret. How she had changed his life forever. He would remember her words. Sometimes the people who seem the strongest are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. He understood those words now more than ever. Diana had seemed like the strongest person in the world. Beautiful, famous, beloved by millions. But she had been carrying a burden so heavy it nearly crushed her. And she had chosen him, a simple guard, to help her carry it. James kept Diana's handkerchief for the rest of his life. He never used it again. He kept it in a small box in his bedroom, a reminder of the day a princess saw him as a person. A reminder that even small people can do big things. A reminder that kindness and courage can change the world. When James was an old man, sitting in his chair and remembering his life, this was the story he loved to tell his grandchildren. Not about standing at Buckingham Palace, not about the fancy uniforms or the royal ceremonies, but about the day a sad princess spoke softly to him, about how her words woke something up inside him, about how he helped her when she needed help most. "Always see people," he would tell.